On the line with us, one of the great writers of our era, one of the great journalists, is nonfiction, best-selling books, The Big Short, The Blind Side, The Big Risk. Now, Michael Lewis has a new book out, Going Infinite, The Rise and Fall of a New Tycoon. That would be Sam Bankman-Fried, I believe it's. Michael, welcome back to the program. It's great having you with us. This is just an amazing book. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Tom. And I got to say, I really appreciate what you were reading before I just came on. This question of the public good and people not understanding what it is, and the kind of systematic gutting of the public good. I mean, the Fifth Risk, the book you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. There was a long section about the Trump administration's attempt to essentially privatize the National Weather Service. And if you start thinking that through, it's like the ultimate public good, knowing the weather. We all know the weather, sure, and we all get the same weather reports and all that. But if instead you sort of you get the tornado warning you pay for. Yeah. It's a dystopia. Is where you end. You end up in this place where nobody wants to live.
Absolutely. That was, by the way, for our listeners on Sirius XM and on our commercial stations around the country who were hearing a news break during that time. On our nonprofit stations, we read a book report. So that was from, I forget what the book was, but it was anyway.
It was good.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Anyway,
but let's get to your book here, Michael. This is first of all, how did you hook up with Sam, and what got you started, going down the trail of this story?
This falls into the category of extraordinary journalistic luck. I had a friend on Wall Street who called me in the end of 2021, fall of 21, and said, we're about to do a business deal with this new crypto exchange called FTX. We want to exchange shares with them because it's the fastest growing financial business we've ever seen. But we got this problem. The guy who runs it, Sam Bankman-Fried, nobody knows who he is. He's on the cover of Forbes magazine and he has $22 billion, but I know nobody who knows him. Could you sit down with him and just give me a sense of who you think he is? So I sat down, for not thinking I was going to write a book or anything. I sat down with this guy, and the stuff that was coming out of his mouth all turned out to be true. I have to say that was just so incredible that I said, I got to move. I'd love to kind of watch you for a while. And so I spent many months interviewing around his business, getting to know him, not quite sure what the story was, except that his fingerprints were everywhere. I mean, he was one of the biggest donors in American politics. Tom Brady was palling around with him. Shaquille O'Neal wanted to go into business with him. 100 venture capitalists had invested in him. All of big Wall Street banks wanted to be kind of in bed with him. It was amazing. He was sitting in the center of the universe, and they didn't have a story, and then it blew up. Yeah. And I just happened to be on site when it blew up.
Yeah.
And so I had a ringside seat that I didn't really earn.
It's a truly remarkable story. You said some of the things he was saying were just amazing and were true. Give us some examples.
I'll give you an example. He was in the process of negotiating through Donald Trump's people with the possibility of paying Donald Trump not to run for president. They're at $5 billion.
Really?
Yes, they really.
Wow.
And well, it was even better at that moment, just after that moment. I give you an example of how in Trump's head his political operation was. There was a primary at the time in the Missouri Senate. Two Republican candidates, one named Eric Greitens, another named Eric Schmidt. And Greitens was, both named Eric. Greitens was an election denier and very Trumpy, and Schmidt was more reasonable. And Sam's political operation was trying to prevent Trump from jumping into the race and endorsing Greitens, the Trumpier candidate. Mm-hmm. And they dreamed up, I watched this happen, but he was telling me about this. It hadn't happened yet. When I first met him, he was telling me about this. They had this idea they're going to get Trump to just come out on Truth Social and say, I'm for Eric in Missouri, without specifying which Eric he was for. And they were going to sell it to Trump as, look, no matter which Eric wins, you can say you backed him. And plus, it'll be really funny and it'll be a meme on social media. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, Trump comes out and says, I'm for Eric.
Wow.
So that's just his, the political life was one thing. It was the financial life, which is what was so extraordinary.
Yeah.
they'd started this business from scratch just, like 18 months before, and venture capitalists had valued it at $40 billion. And I had people who were like very serious Silicon Valley investors telling me they thought this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, might be the world's first trillionaire. So the numbers were just insane. And it wasn't that it was fraud at that moment. It wasn't that they were just making up the numbers. They essentially opened a casino, right? That's what an exchange is, a casino for cryptocurrency trading. And the volume and the level of activity was so great, and they took a little slice out of each bet, each trade. Sure. It was a really pretty simple, profitable business.
Isn't that kind of what Fidelity and Schwab do?
No, it's more like what the New York Stock Exchange does. Okay. They just facilitate transactions, right. But crypto it's essentially a gambler's market, and it's a huge global market. I mean, it's a $2 trillion market right now. Wow. And you've got people trading in and out all the time, and they pay you a little bit for each of the trades. You do quite well, and so he had a viable business that he proceeded to screw up. And what I walked into, I'm gonna give you another example of kind of like what caught my eye right at the beginning. There was no organization. I mean, it was a business that had just started. I said, who's the CFO? He said, I don't need a CFO, Chief Financial Officer. I said, why not? He says, I'm in charge of the money and I know where it is. I don't understand why anybody needs a CFO. And I thought that's real odd. And I said, well, what about, could I just get an organization chart just to see who does what there? And he says, we don't have one of those either. And I later found out, this is in the book. You can actually open the book and see that in the inside of the jacket flap. The only organization chart for FTX, which had hundreds of employees, was one that was assembled through psychotherapy sessions by the corporate shrink with all the employees, because they were all so disturbed that they didn't know what their job titles were, who their bosses were. And so the shrink had secretly created the organization chart. And that seemed to me a bit of a metaphor for the whole operation. It was a bit of an insane asylum. So
who was Sam before he started FTX, and how did he start FTX? What's the origin story of this?
It's a great question. He is, I dug quite a bit into his childhood. He's a child of two Stanford law professors, beloved on the Stanford campus. The tax law professors, they're academics. They aren't of this world. And he grew up, he himself, incredibly socially isolated, like awkward. I mean, he's recently been diagnosed with autism, but wasn't diagnosed as a kid. And he, when I said, can I introduce me to some people who knew you when you were a kid? He said, basically, there isn't anybody. And basically there wasn't. So he grew up in this, and he was aware of obvious cognitive problems. Like he didn't feel things he noticed other people felt. And he had little things like, or not so little things, like he didn't make facial expressions when he was talking to people. He had to learn with a mirror.
It sounds like an Aspie.
Yeah, extreme. Yeah. And so this person, no one would have predicted this person would end up in a social role. What he was good at math and games. And he went to MIT, and out of MIT, because of the way Wall Street has become, he was sort of like identified, handpicked out of MIT by a high frequency trading firm to trade, to do automated trading on Wall Street. And he was extremely good at it. And so he starts, by the age of 24, he's being paid whatever, $500,000 or something to trade in the financial markets. And what he's doing is looking for inefficiencies to exploit, like in little ones, like you might be able to buy IBM stock on an Indian exchange for $100 and sell it at the same time on an American exchange for $101. That's a crude example, but that kind of thing. And doing this, he looks out in the world, and this is 2014, and says, my God, the most inefficient market in the world is cryptocurrency. That you can buy a Bitcoin in the United States for $100 and sell it for $150 in Japan at the same time. And none of our kind of thinking, our trading types are in it. So that's how he gets that. This is the beginning of him and his fortune is that he leaves his Wall Street firm and he starts a firm just to trade in cryptocurrency, doing the kinds of technical, smart things that Wall Street traders now do.